We are searchers. We spend years searching for the perfect note, the perfect phrase, the perfect stroke of color. You chase inspiration like a soldier stalks a ghost in the jungle. And just when you think you've found it, when you hold it trembling in your hands, it dissolves. It fades like mist at dawn, and you are left with nothing but the echoes of what might have been. I have seen them, the ones who surrendered, the ones who traded fire for comfort, who let the world tell them that art is a hobby, that passion must bow before profit. I have watched them sit in boardrooms wearing suits tailored from the skin of their younger selves. I have seen them in bars laughing a little too loudly, gripping glasses like lifelines, staring past the faces of friends at a life they abandoned. Now, for those of us who have stayed on the path our entire lives, we are searchers. We are those seeking the sound in our head and hoping to one day find that sound in our fingertips, find that perfect, swath of color on the page. It is a desire and a drive that lives within us. And some of us have had to leave that all behind. And I understand both. I understand the people that have had to put aside those things and move on from a life of music. But for the rest of us, we continued the search. We continued the search for meaning. We continued the search for truth. We continued the search for tone. There is a tone that is inside of our heads, and I'll give you a story. So this past weekend, I went up to Daytona and with the family and to go see some other family and all that. And the hotel we were staying at in Daytona, there is a guitar center right across the way, right? So I always like to go in there and just see what's in there and, check out, see if there's any deals and all that. But man, there were two, I would say somewhere between 16, 17, 18, 19, maybe even 20-year-olds, two teenagers playing guitar in there and nonstop, incessantly playing guitar. And, playing some songs I recognized. At one point, one of them was trying to play Miss You by the Stones. And it was weird. They'd play a Metallica song 1 minute and then something super heavy. And then they'd play some boomer rock or something. But here's the thing, man. The tones that they were getting out of what could potentially be a really good sounding rig. They were playing through a 412 EVH, the iconic 5150 iconic, right? And I've heard some great sounds come out of that rig, and I know it's certainly capable of sounding great, but particularly when these two kids would play together, it sounded like cats screeching. It was one of the most horrific sounds in the world. And, I'm glad that these kids are playing guitar and spending their afternoon in Guitar Center. But at the same time, it's like, dude, they were trying out every single guitar in the store and hogging the one good amp in the store. And, I saw the look on the manager's face, and he just had this blank stare, and he had his hair, he had like kind of spiky, short punk rock kind of hair. and he's just got this vacant stare, and I'm hearing these guys just nonstop, just butchering the instruments, butchering them with a lack of tone. It would have been okay if they'd have played these songs and dialed in a good tone and all that, but man, it was brutal. And I didn't dare say anything, but you could not try out any instruments in there. You really couldn't even think. It was really hard to even think and look at things and without just constantly hearing this. It wasn't so much when they were playing the riffs, and those riffs sounded bad, but when they tried a solo, it was literally like two cats fighting in a bag. It was one of the worst sounds I had ever heard, and the blank face on the store manager. I mean, what do you do? One of the kids was extremely large, and there was a very pungent, very pungent aroma emanating from him. And the sound between that and the sound of cats screeching and the fact that they were putting their hands on like every single guitar on the wall. And you knew these guys weren't going to buy anything. You knew they weren't going to. And you know what? Like I said, I'm glad that some younger guys are playing guitar, and maybe no one has said, hey, let me help you dial in a tone, or hey, maybe if you play the notes in this way, maybe you can get a better tone. But man, here's the thing. We all have to start somewhere. Now, I'd like to think that when I was a young kid, that I had a better tone than that. And I don't know, because I don't have any reference points of how I sounded when I was that age. But, here's the thing. I've always been on a tone quest. And when I was a kid, there was no EVH iconic amp. There was Fender, combos, which were very clean sounding with reverb, mostly silver face stuff I would find in the stores. And later on, there were Mesa Boogies. There weren't a lot of Marshall stacks where I grew up to plug into. And, back then, those amps did not have a lot of gain. And the only way you'd get them to even closely try and sound like Eddie Van Halen is if you played it so loud that your parents would kick you out of the house. And that is the reality for a lot of us. A lot of guys, Gen X, boomers, we didn't have all this gear, all these things. It's, I think, even more now simpler to get a good tone. We've been searching for tone our entire lives. And now, in the palm of your hands, you can have something that can get you an incredible tone with very little effort. Imagine, back in the day, and I'll tell you a story. One of my roommates in LA, he had the bucks. His people were going to help him out, get the bucks to buy a Bob Bradshaw rig. What is a Bob Bradshaw rig? A Bob Bradshaw rig was the thing you had to have. This was probably 1987, and it's what Lukather had. It's what Landau had. It's what all the top session players in LA had. A rack with a preamp and a power amp and a TC Electronics 2290 delay and a few other things in there, and then a foot switcher to be able to change channels on your preamp. And this particular gentleman had a Soldano, 3-channel Soldano preamp, which was chef's kiss, incredible tones. And, I think he had a couple single boogie cabs. And this whole Bradshaw rig was, I think, just the rig and not including some of the parts. The parts would, maybe some of it he had to purchase separately, but I think the whole thing was close to $10,000. maybe even more than that. Maybe if you had factored in some things that he already had and was able to utilize some pieces, but basically hiring a professional rig builder to build you a studio and tour ready guitar rig. And it was an amazing thing to hear that. The first time I'd ever heard stereo guitar with TC Electronics 2290 stereo delay. There's been some recent videos on that delay, and hearing that thing in person back then, hearing the stereo ping pong delays with modulation and all that, think you had to have $10,000 to build a rig like that, to build a rig where you could go, okay, I need a clean compressed chorus tone, for my clean, 80s style clean tones. And then I need an overdriven tone for my rock rhythm guitar. And then I need a lead tone swimming and reverb and delay and all that. In order to do those things, to be able to pull up those sounds instantly, you had to build this huge rack. You had to have all this, each piece probably costing thousands of dollars. And then you'd have to hire the guy to put it all together, because making sense of all that, if you just did it yourself, and I tried to do that a few years later, I ended up with a rack with some some gaps in it where there weren't things. And I just tried to do it myself. And it never really came to fruition in the same manner. It just cost too much. And nowadays, man, if you want to, try and get EVH's tone, they've got guitars that are designed after his, pickups and things like that. And there's amps and all that. And, but, at the same time, you could get, a modeler and it would have some very close tones. I mean, I looked on the Fractal website last night, and you can get a Fractal FM3, which is pretty incredible unit that you could get all of those Bob Bradshaw tones. You could get all of that rack sounding kind of tones. And that thing's going for $1,099. But you know what? For even less money, you could get an Ampero Stomp 2. It's what I use probably in the video that I'm going to use for the playing clip in this video. I use something like that. And you can get up all these stereo delays and preamps and IRs and all of this stuff. And so, man, we've been on this tone quest, and I almost feel like now that we've been searching our entire lives, it's all right there. Any tone you want to get, you can get like that. I can remember all through the 90s, all through the 2000s, before modeling really became a great thing. People were chasing the Edward Van Halen tone long after Van Halen had gotten, out of favor or became old hat. People were chasing that tone. Did he use a Variac? Did he not use a Variac? Did he run a graphic EQ, before his amps? And all of these theories and things. And now, man, with technology, you can get great tones, but you still have to have the tone in your head, the tone in your hands, the tone in your heart, the tone in your soul. Because you could still sound like those two adolescent kids at Guitar Center. So your technique, the type of pick that you use, the way you strike the notes, where you place your hands, how your attack on the instrument, your fingering, the cleanness of execution, all of that is a huge factor. And the reality is this, man, everything now is on the table. Everything is out for the taking. Any tone that you want to get, you can get, and you could spend a few $100. You could spend $1,000, or you could go back and try to recreate some rig from back in the day and spend tens of thousands of dollars. The reality is, you're going to only be as good as the tone that's in your head, that's in your hands, and that's in your heart. And no matter what amp, no matter what pedal, no matter what modeler, no matter what rack you play through, what you have and what you put in, garbage out. Greatness in, greatness out. That is the reality of all of us who have been on this quest for our entire lives.